My husband is marrying my one and only sister. Today, in this very place. And yet, my face remains perfectly calm. I've spent years practicing for this moment. Dressed in pure white, my sister Katie walks down the aisle on our father's arm, moving toward the groom waiting at the altar. The groom, with a nervous expression, takes her hand. That groom was my husband. Standing there was none other than Joey. The venue, the Plaza Hotel, overlooking Central Park. Outside the windows stretched the Manhattan skyline, while inside, the room was adorned with white flowers and golden decorations, making the entire scene feel like a dream. Katie had always managed to claim the most dazzling things. She always wanted what belonged to me. And my parents always took her side. Whatever she wanted, she would get, even if it meant taking something precious away from me. When we were children, Katie broke my favorite doll. Instead of scolding her, my parents told me, "You're the older sister, you need to be patient," and bought her a brand new one while I was left in tears. When choosing a college, my own aspirations were dismissed as unrealistic. But when Katie chose a far-fetched path, they agreed without hesitation to cover her tuition. Her jealousy and my parents' favoritism were always there, like a shadow over my life. Today's wedding was no exception. I sat quietly, apart from the crowd of guests, watching the scene unfold. I wore a simple navy dress, elegant but far from trendy. I might have seemed out of place among the glamorous attire, but to me, that dress was my armor. The solemn music began, and the ceremony was announced. Smiles filled the room, all eyes fixed on the altar. I smiled too, though the meaning behind mine was unlike anyone else's. The vows, the rings, the sacred rituals, they were nothing but a performance, a charade to deceive everyone watching. Then came the reception. Katie, supposedly in the happiest moment of her life, took the microphone with a champagne glass in hand. Her eyes locked directly onto mine. "Thank you for coming, Gina. Joey's happy you're here too." Her voice, sweet and poisonous, rang through the hall. After all, he told me how much he regretted wasting 5 years with such a boring woman. "Sorry, sis. You were never more than a dull wife. He only married you for your money." Snickers rippled through the room, followed by mocking, pitying stares aimed at me. My parents looked at me with cold eyes. As if to say, "Are you really going to ruin Katie's happy day?" Their faces carried a mix of reproach and resignation. Everyone seemed to expect me to either break down in tears or explode with rage. Instead, I calmly stood, picked up the microphone nearby, and with a flawless smile, I said, "For my money? That's strange. Our prenup ensures he wouldn't get a single cent from me." The room froze in an instant. The laughter vanished. Every gaze turned toward me, now wide with shock. And so, my years-long revenge began. 5 years earlier. My marriage to Joey should have been the brightest moment of my life. He was a driven Wall Street financier, intelligent, charismatic, the kind of man everyone envied. I, meanwhile, had just started working as a paralegal at a law firm specializing in corporate law and financial crimes. For the first 2 years, I was happy, or at least I believed I was. But change crept in quietly, inevitably. Joey's subtle condescension appeared in small moments. Whenever I voiced an opinion, he would pat my head like a child and say, "Gina, you don't need to think about difficult things." Soon, he was introducing me to friends as my beautiful but slightly naive wife. I wasn't his partner, I was his trophy, a decorative piece to highlight his intellect. The betrayal revealed itself one rainy Saturday afternoon. Joey was away on a sudden business trip to Chicago. I was about to sit down in the living room to catch up on some overdue work when I noticed his tablet carelessly left on the chair. Normally, he always kept it locked away in the drawer of his study desk. But that day, for some reason, it had been left out, and the screen lit up. To say it was just a moment of weakness doesn't cover it. It was the poison of suspicion, smoldering deep inside me for so long, finally pushing me into action. On the screen was a message notification. The sender, Katie. Last night's call after Gina went to bed was incredible. Hearing your voice makes me feel like I'm truly special. My fingers trembled. Almost as if they belonged to someone else, moving without my will, they tapped the screen and opened the chat history. And there it was, hell itself. She really doesn't suspect a thing. My sister's always been like that. Too wrapped up in her own little world to notice what's around her. That's why taking you from her was nothing more than justice. With you, I can finally be myself. You're the partner I deserve, someone I can have real, intelligent conversations with. With every scroll, I could feel 2 years of marriage crumbling piece by piece. Their words mocked me relentlessly. And then, I found something that made my blood run cold. The Cayman Shell Company is going smoothly. Soon we'll have Gina's signature on the trust. That's brilliant, Joey. Not that it's hard, considering how clueless she is. She has no idea her assets are being siphoned off for our future. Until we secure her inheritance completely, I'll just keep this marriage going. A little more patience. I stared at the screen, even forgetting to breathe. What struck first wasn't grief, but searing humiliation. A naive wife. A boring woman. The pitiful Gina who never notices anything. That was the judgment passed on me, by my beloved husband and my only sister. No tears came. Instead, something deep within me began to burn. A cold, pale blue flame. I gently placed the tablet back where I'd found it and took a deep breath. At that moment, all the knowledge drilled into me at the law firm started clicking into place like the pieces of a puzzle. If I confronted them out of raw emotion, I'd lose everything and be dismissed as nothing more than a jealous wife. That wasn't my path. I resolved then and there to keep playing the role they'd cast me in, the simple, ignorant wife. I would perfect that performance. And behind the mask, I would begin quietly, methodically preparing to strip them of everything. This was the beginning of my silent war. While they laughed at my supposed ignorance, I vowed to dig their graves, inch by inch, with precision. From the day I decided on revenge, my life split into 2 faces. By day, I was Gina, the gentle, slightly dull wife who loved her husband, ran the household, and listened to his occasional complaints about work. By night, I became a relentless investigator, uncovering the lies and deceit festering inside Joey's empire. Joey believed I had no interest in his work. That was precisely why he let his guard down. He brought home documents and left them in his study. He took business calls in my presence, tossing around jargon like code while I sat nearby pretending to read. He never imagined I understood every word and remembered all of it. If we use the Cayman Islands shell companies, we can obscure the flow of profits. Art investments are perfect, difficult to value, ideal for moving assets. Each phrase became a fragment of evidence. I began recording dates, names, and the details of his conversations while my memory was still fresh. As I pieced together the proof of Joey's schemes, I recalled the thick prenuptial agreement I'd been made to sign before our marriage. Working at a law firm, I had understood better than anyone how important a prenup was. And Joey, cautious, meticulous, the Wall Street financier, had insisted on it as well. We had both agreed, under the guise of protecting our assets and ensuring fairness, to draft that contract with our attorneys. The prenup stated, each party retains ownership of premarital assets, and any assets acquired during the marriage will be divided fairly in the event of divorce. A standard, reasonable agreement. I read every clause carefully, agreed to all of it, and signed. But after uncovering Joey and Katie's betrayal and beginning to gather evidence of his financial crimes, I noticed a disturbing contradiction. The Cayman Shell Companies. The transfers disguised as art investments. My inheritance wasn't marital property, it came from my grandfather and was managed through a complex trust fund. After our marriage, Joey persuaded me that it would be more efficient if he managed the assets. He convinced me to sign a sweeping power of attorney, giving him full authority. Each year, he presented me with falsified reports, making it appear as though the trust was growing steadily. Even when funds were moved, he brushed it off with jargon, just reallocating the portfolio to more profitable investments. At the time, I couldn't see through the deception. But when I cross-referenced his shadow ledgers with his emails to offshore entities, I discovered the truth. He had been using my trust funds as collateral for loans, converting the assets into hard-to-value private shares and artwork, and funneling them, piece by piece, into Cayman companies he controlled. His methods were elaborate, involving layers of dummy corporations. Even with my background at a law firm, it took painstaking work to connect the evidence. With the prenup in place, touching my separate inheritance should have been legally impossible. Why, then, was he so bold? So reckless, acting as if my assets already belonged to him? The moment that question crossed my mind, I was struck by a chilling, terrifying possibility. What if the prenup I signed doesn't even exist in its original form? All I had was a copy from the day I signed. The original was locked away in Joey's safe. If he'd swapped out a page after I signed. The suspicion was too dangerous to keep to myself. I reached out to Tiffany, a college friend who was now a top attorney specializing in divorce and financial crime. We met at a cafe after years apart. I laid out the evidence I had gathered. Her expression shifted between outrage and sympathy as she gripped my hand. "Gina, I can't believe you carried this alone. This isn't just a divorce issue, it's criminal. Financial fraud of the worst kind. We cannot let them win. What if my husband secretly replaced a page after I signed, adding clauses against me?" The moment I asked that question, Tiffany's eyes flashed with sharp intensity. "That wouldn't just be a breach of contract, Gina. That would be fraud. Document forgery. A serious crime. If you can prove it, the entire prenup could be invalidated." Her words gave me the final piece I needed for my plan. From then on, we met regularly. Under Tiffany's guidance, I focused on gathering specific documents and evidence. She connected me anonymously with handwriting experts and digital forensics specialists. Finally, the decisive moment arrived. I waited until Joey was away on a business trip, then entered his study. My target, the original prenuptial agreement. Tiffany had predicted he would keep it where he felt most secure. I searched carefully. Then I found it, behind a piece of modern art on the wall, a hidden safe. With trembling fingers, I tried possible codes: his mother's birthday, Katie's birthday, his company's founding date. The heavy metal door clicked open. Inside was a single file. Prenuptial agreement, Gina Clarkson and Joey Clarkson. I scanned every page with a secure app and sent the files immediately to Tiffany and her expert team. Hours later, Tiffany's text came through. "Bingo, Gina. The climax of these years, you're going to love how this ends." The expert's findings were worse than I expected. The original prenup had indeed been the standard, fair contract. But Joey had inserted a replacement page that read, "Regardless of the cause of divorce, full management rights of all assets, including those inherited by Gina Clarkson, shall be granted to her husband, Joey Clarkson. As. Furthermore, Gina waives all rights to property division and spousal support, permanently." It was a predatory clause, so one-sided it bordered on enslavement. And the forensic analysis confirmed it. The ink on the signature page differed slightly from the ink on the fraudulent page. Scientific proof that Joey had swapped it out. The irrefutable evidence of his crime. I had gathered every piece of evidence. Joey's tax evasion. His hidden assets. The forged prenuptial agreement. And his betrayal with Katie. In my hands, I held more than enough weapons to completely destroy their lives. All that remained was to decide when and where to pull the trigger, when I could crush them most effectively, most ruthlessly. One evening, Joey swirled a glass of wine in his hand, wearing a theatrically sympathetic expression, and said, "Gina, let's get a divorce." For a split second, my heart froze. But I masked it with composure, waiting for his next words. "I don't want to make you unhappy anymore. I've been so consumed by work that I neglected you. You deserve to be happy." Then, he delivered the decisive line, draped in false kindness. "Divorce procedures can be complicated and burdensome for you. Don't worry, I'll handle everything. The lawyers will follow the prenup, and all you'll need to do is sign at the end." As he spoke, I instantly saw through his real motive. The timing of this so-called divorce was no accident. His confidence revealed that he had reached the final stage of his scheme, to conceal the illicit assets he'd built in my name and to seize control of my inheritance completely. He believed that in a legal proceeding, once he presented the falsified prenup, I would be powerless. That I'd surrender everything without resistance. He avoided any mention of his affair with Katie, careful not to provoke me into a legal battle. He never imagined I held all the evidence of his crimes. In his heart, he was utterly convinced I was nothing more than a pitiful wife who would weep in silence and accept defeat. I played the role perfectly. With a trembling voice, I whispered, "All right, Joey. If that's what you want, I'll leave everything to you." And with that, he left the house. I knew, of course, no real divorce proceedings had been filed. Months later, Joey returned, this time with Katie at his side. She wore a mask of contrived remorse, though her eyes gleamed with triumph. "Gina, we need to talk," Joey began, pulling Katie close by the waist. After our divorce was settled, I ran into Katie again by chance. She listened when I was hurting. And we fell in love. Katie cooed, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "I'm sorry, Gina. But I couldn't just stand by when Joey was so broken. We only grew closer after things with you were truly over. This is pure love, something no one should blame us for." The nauseating performance played out before me. And then Joey delivered the final blow. "That's why we've decided to get married. We'll have the wedding in a year." Everything clicked into place. Why he planned a wedding with Katie even though our divorce wasn't finalized. His greed knew no bounds. He intended to keep our marriage legally intact until he stripped me of all rights and assets. The divorce he offered me wasn't legal separation at all. It was a trap, phony paperwork designed to trick me into transferring control of my inheritance, using the fraudulent prenup as leverage. To Katie, he lied, claiming the divorce was done, dangling her dream of a lavish wedding like a carrot to keep her loyal. The risk of bigamy didn't faze him in the slightest. He was utterly convinced that as long as I, ignorant and uninformed, signed the papers he prepared, everything would unfold exactly as he planned. But Joey had unknowingly built the perfect stage for me. On the very day they believed they'd stripped me of everything and won, I would drag them both into despair. And what stage could be more fitting than their own wedding? And now, the day has come. My revenge, unveiled at their ceremony. When it comes to the prenup, Joey wouldn't be entitled to a single cent from me. The single sentence I spoke froze the air of the grand ballroom, its chandeliers still glittering overhead. In an instant, the whispers of the guests fell silent, and even the music seemed to hold its breath. Every pair of eyes darted between me and Joey and Katie, whose faces had gone deathly pale, as if they were witnessing something beyond belief. Joey snapped back first, his mask of civility cracking wide open. "Don't spout nonsense. Gina, have you lost your mind? This is mine and Katie's wedding day. Someone call security and get this woman out of here." His furious shouts echoed uselessly, while I simply returned a calm, knowing smile. From my clutch, I slowly drew out my phone. "Fabricated? Is that so, Joey? Then why don't we let everyone here decide for themselves?" I pressed the button I had prepared in advance. The ballroom's massive screen flickered to life. Guests turned with puzzled looks, then their faces shifted to shock. Gasps echoed. Some whispered urgently to neighbors, the murmurs spreading like a rising tide. The first file I displayed was ironclad evidence of Joey's financial crimes. He shouted, his voice trembling. "This is some mistake. It's all fabricated." "Fabricated?" My voice cut like ice. "Then perhaps you'll think the next file is my invention too?" I pressed the button again. This time, years of explicit messages between Joey and Katie appeared. The entire room had believed our divorce was finalized a year ago, that only after that did a heartbroken Joey find comfort in Katie's arms. But the screen told the real story, proof of an affair spanning years. "I love you, Katie. My false life with that boring wife will soon be over. I can't wait to be yours completely, Joey. I can already picture the look of despair on my sister's face. And it didn't stop there. Photos of them entering a hotel together 3 years ago, while I was still legally his wife. A video of Joey gifting her expensive jewelry. Evidence I had collected over 5 painstaking years, an archive of betrayal. The ballroom erupted into chaos. My mother collapsed with a scream, while my father's face turned crimson with rage as he glared at Joey. Katie stood frozen, whispering, "No. This isn't true." Her face pale as death. And then, at the perfect moment, the heavy ballroom doors opened. There stood Tiffany, my attorney. Dressed in a black suit, her face expressionless, she walked forward with deliberate steps. In her hand was a thick leather file. "Mr. Joey Clarkson," her voice rang out clearly over the din, "on behalf of my client, Gina Clarkson, I present you with divorce papers." She drew a document from her file and thrust it against Joey's chest. The truth was undeniable, Joey and I were still legally married. Yet he had lied to Katie and every guest, convincing them our divorce was finalized and this wedding was valid. Of course, no such divorce had ever been filed. He would never let me go until he had stripped me of every last asset. I had let him believe otherwise, until today. Tiffany continued. "Here we have the handwriting and ink analysis proving you forged the prenuptial agreement. And this," she raised another document, "is the indictment draft detailing your tax evasion and asset concealment. The originals have already been submitted to the New York District Attorney's Office and the IRS." Scornful, condemning stares pierced Joey like spears. There was no one left to defend him. The wealth, the status, the reputation he had built, all of it crumbled like a sandcastle in mere minutes. Katie finally seemed to grasp the truth. Her blood drained away, leaving her face twisted with jealousy and rage as she turned from me to Joey. "Wait. What do you mean? The divorce?" Her voice cracked, then rose in hysteria. "Joey, answer me. You told me you were already divorced from Gina. That's why we're here today, why I'm standing here in this dress." When Joey failed to answer, she snapped. Clutching her gown, she hurled her bouquet to the floor. "Lies. All lies. You used me. Then what is this wedding? What am I standing here for, just a pathetic clown?" Her sobs turned to screams as she pounded Joey's chest, curses spilling out like poison. "I've envied Gina's perfect life for so long. I thought taking you would finally make me happy. I wanted to steal everything from her. My perfect life?" For the first time, I looked at her with true pity. "If that's what you thought, Katie, it was nothing but the result of my own hard work. And that's something you will never understand, because all you've ever known is how to take from others." 6 months have passed since that hellish wedding. Joey was arrested on the spot, the overwhelming evidence Tiffany presented sealing his fate on charges of fraud and document forgery. His financial empire collapsed, and it wasn't long before his name vanished from Wall Street entirely. Most of the fortune he had tried so desperately to protect was lost during the trial, and what little remained was ordered to be paid to me as restitution. The scandal from that disastrous wedding spread like wildfire across tabloids and social media. Katie, far from earning sympathy as the tragic bride duped by the con of the century, was branded instead as a greedy woman who had stolen her sister's husband. Public opinion was merciless. Rumor had it she lost everything and went running back to our parents. But even they, who had spoiled her for years, finally turned their backs, shamed by the world's condemnation and confronted by my unwavering stance. Completely abandoned, she now lives alone in a rundown apartment on the outskirts of town. She works double shifts, waiting tables at a late-night diner and scrubbing floors in the early morning. A far cry from the glamorous life she once flaunted, reduced now to living paycheck to paycheck. Months later, my parents came to me in tears. Their faces were haggard as they repeated over and over, "We should have believed you. We spoiled Katie far too much." I accepted their apology quietly, but I told them, "It will take time for me to forgive you. And I will never return to the way things once were." I've graduated from being part of this family. Perhaps those words sounded cold. But they were necessary. To walk forward on my own path, I had to sever the ties that had once bound me. What I fought to protect was never just money. It was my dignity, my worth, the very essence of myself that had been trampled. And on the other side of that battle, I gained a new life. Not as someone's wife. Not as someone's sister. But as one person, Gina, living a proud life on her own terms.